Welcome to episode 83 of the Highly Relevant Podcast. I am your host, Jack Rico, and if you hear birds chirping and a little bit of nature in the background, that is because I am in Spain. I am on vacation, just taking advantage of the summer break, but not taking advantage of not giving you guys an episode for this July 4th weekend, and I have two great guests. One of them is Carmen Cabana. She's a cinematographer from Colombia who works in American television shows such as Narcos, as well as STARZ's new Vida. And we kind of talk a little bit about what it's like to be a woman and be a Latina and be a cinematographer, which is usually a industry that's mostly men. That's really changing, obviously, with Rachel Morrison from Black Panther and Mudbound being nominated for an Oscar. Things are changing, but how are things changing for a Latina? So we kind of broke a little bit into that. And for anybody, any woman that also wants to kind of break in, she gives us a lot of really good tips in what you need to have in terms of skills and the mindset you need to have to kind of break into this business. And then obviously Ant-Man and the Wasp. This is Ant-Man 2. It comes out in theaters this weekend. And I, for one, really enjoyed it. My friend Mike Sargent really enjoyed it. And we're going to talk about why the movie is good. Not necessarily just the typical review, but we're kind of going to break down sort of a lot of the periphery of what this movie actually means for Hollywood, what it means for moviegoers, and what are some of the things that has made it good, because I didn't think the first one was necessarily good. This one's just right, and it's right for the families. It's right in so many ways, and we kind of discussed that in this episode. So stick with us, hear the birds chirping a little bit more, and we'll be right back with Carmen Cabana. Carmen Cabana is currently one of the most sought-after Latina cinematographers in the entertainment industry, and her ability to visually capture emotions has made her one of the top female cinematographers amongst filmmakers in the film and television industry working today. Carmen Cabana, welcome to the Highly Relevant Podcast.
Thank you very much, Jack. It's happy to be here with you.
Carmen, what exactly is cinematography?
Well, cinematography is the art of telling a story visually. So we are sort of the right hand of the directors when it comes to deciding how things are going to be framed, lit, or the camera movements. We handle all those decisions in collaboration with the director, and then we make it happen. Basically, we do communicate and give the technical assessments to the rest of the team and the department heads so that it can all be collaboration in unison.
How did you get started into cinematography?
That actually was life pushing me in that direction, because I love telling stories and I wanted to be a writer. And then while being in the U.S., I started to discover my passion for cinematography. And I did a documentary in Venezuela, and the people that saw it here in the U.S. really loved it. It won an Audience Award. And then they called me for different shorts, thesis projects, music videos. And a year and a half into film school, I booked my first feature, which was amazing. And then I guess the story, then by demand, I sort of started to research more and learn more about the craft, because I had to keep up with what the needs of all my clients with the different films.
Right.
And in doing it, I fell in love.
When you were getting started, how many female cinematographers were there while you were working in the industry?
Very few. I mean, that I knew of, there were like 6 in the ASC, Nancy Schreiber, Amy Vincent, and a few others. They were kind of like the bigger names.
Right, like Rachel Morrison.
Yeah, exactly. Well, actually, Rachel Morrison back then, when I started, I had not heard of her because she's on the younger side, I believe. But there weren't many actually. And I never met one in person until probably 3 years after I was already in cinematography. So very few.
Why do you think that that's the case? Why is it that you were one of the very few cinematographers in this business when there's so much creative talent out there? Why has Hollywood failed us in that matter?
I think, unfortunately, because of the stereotype and the assumption that cinematography is a work for men, because it does involve a lot of, physical effort as well with equipment and stuff like that. I think people underlooked women and they didn't see it as a possibility. Or women were getting sort of, I don't want to say typecast, but like type crew, if that's a word, into films that were more like romantic comedies or coming of age or dramas versus, action or other mainstream things. So I think a lot of it was a misconception that fortunately right now is starting to break and people are seeing how equal we are. And possibly, a lot of the talent that existed there, since they weren't getting the opportunities, they were going into other departments. Like they were staying forever and ever in assistant camera positions or, in gaffer or stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So it did. I think it's a matter of people not having faith that women could do it. Unfortunately, by now, especially now that you mentioned Rachel Morrison, people can see clearly that women not only can do it, we can do it really, really well.
What do you think is the value of a female sensibility in cinematography compared to a man?
It's very different. I mean, it's hard to describe in words, but we do see things a different way by nature. And I think in the way that we also collaborate with people, like I find myself to be very nurturing and very accommodating of not only my team, but everybody in the production. Like I really think of it globally as a community work versus just like my own little universe and my own department. And I think that is a female thing, that we tend to be protective and we can multitask really well. But for the rest, it's very subjective. Like, for instance, in the show Vida, it's all about showing, the female gaze, the female perspective of things or into sexuality. And how do you define that? And like I said, it's hard in words. But if you look at the show, you will see that the way these sex scenes are portrayed, it's not like the traditional way where we are like emphasizing the women's body and things like that. Like we're actually emphasizing more the male anatomy or stuff like that.
Interesting.
It's very interesting. Yeah.
You started getting your name out there through Narcos. You were the cinematographer for Narcos. How did Vida, which is now on STARZ, how did that job come to you?
Actually, I gotta give credit to my agent. My agent, Madi Paolo at APA, he...
So cinematographers have agents too? I had no idea about that. Yes. Wow, look at that. Okay, I thought it just applied to actors and directors, but I never thought that cinematographers would have agents as well.
Oh, we have agents and publicists, like my wonderful publicist team right now.
Yeah, cool.
Managers. Yeah, we do. We definitely have agents. And the way it works, especially on big shows like this, is the line producers, they reach out to the agencies for recommendations on who are kind of like their top talents. And my agency, APA, submitted me to Crisan, which is our line producer, and she very kindly, called me in for an interview, and then I met all the producers, the showrunner, Peña. I watched the pilot that they had done, and I loved the show. So basically, I nailed the interview, and I'm very grateful for that opportunity.
Tell me a little bit about the show, because it's getting a lot of high praise for having very Latinx topics. How much did you know about the show, and what did you bring from your own experience to the show?
Well, for one, I am a woman and I'm also Latina. So it is a show indeed that deals with, Latinx, but also with what is happening with gentrification in East Los Angeles, which is something that actually in Colombia hasn't happened much. So it's something that I've been learning about more here in Los Angeles. So my job was kind of like to bring a little bit of like the Latin roots into the visual aesthetics of how we portray the streets, the businesses, like the life that is happening, because the neighborhood is a big character in the story. And like I said, I might take on sexuality. Like I don't know if it's going to sound funny, but I am a sexual woman, and I was always kind of like upset about how, sex scenes or female desires were portrayed, especially in Latin culture. It's like most of the Latin content was always dealing about women wanting to get married and all these cliches and stereotypes, or women portrayed as like, the weaker end. And these female characters in the show, they are badasses. They do whatever they want. They are rebels. They each one have their own issues. And they definitely take all the freedom to do what they please about, and even make the mistakes that they want and they're not ashamed of. So they're non-traditional characters, and also the LGBT aspect is something that wasn't portray too much in Latin shows.
Mm-hmm.
And this one, a lot of the characters, are gay. So that's another aspect that I felt the show was very bold about.
You've worked in Mexico, Cuba, Colombia. I'm Colombian myself. My parents are from Barranquilla, Colombia. And, one of the things about Colombian cinema overall is that we have great talent. The problem is that we don't make enough films for people to see. How would you rate Colombian cinema today?
Well, I think Colombia, again, has also been given really big steps. And the film incentives that we got, I don't remember how many years ago, but the film incentives have helped more productions get made. I feel more than that is the content. Like, I think Colombia suffers a little bit, again, from the stereotype that a lot of people do films about, drugs and narcos and things like that. And the Colombians ourselves, we're tired of that topic. We're tired of the cliche. But unfortunately, that's what seems to be selling in the international market. As you saw, Narcos was a huge success. So there's kind of that contradiction of the stories that we want to make and we want to portray as Colombians, because our culture is so rich and so diverse, as you know. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, the international market keeps labeling us as, this drug dealing country, which is absolutely not the case. But there are very exciting filmmakers coming out of it. Andy Baez, who's also a director of Narcos, he's done some really great movies. He did a horror one that I really liked. He also did Satanas. So there's been more things being made. And Congo Films, now they open a film school that is amazing with all the equipment that they had at the rental house. So I'm really excited for more things happening and for, more stories to reach in the international market. Y Barranquilla is awesome, by the way. My family I'm sorry, I just want to say my family are de la costa.
Oh, qué bien. Oh, pero es que con la playa y la rumba y la música de vallenato,
Todo, la arepa de huevo.
La arepa de huevo. Yes. Oh, it's just so delicious. But you were talking about Andrés Baez. I spoke to him several months ago for one of the premieres of Narcos on Netflix. There's a contradiction here. Narcos glorifies and promotes drugs in the cocaine era of Pablo Escobar. And here you have a Colombian director, and now you have a Colombian cinematographer also attached to it. Doesn't that give the optics that you guys are supporting this when there's all this momentum and wave about not being a part or being affiliated in any way to anything that promotes drugs in the past of Colombia?
The way I look at it is I think of, for instance, the Holocaust movies. Like, there are so many movies about the Holocaust, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they are promoting. I think filmmaking is a way of showing the world, certain realities and certain things. And even the Narcos does glorify a little bit of Pablo Escobar, for instance. Like, they portray him in a way that you kind of like the guy, because unfortunately it is the lead of the show.
Right.
So you can hate your protagonist. It did show a lot of the hardcore things that Pablo indeed did to cause to Colombia. For instance, all those explosions, the death of the innocents. Like, basically, Pablo Escobar brought terrorism into Colombia. And I think the show also does its part in showing that and the effects and the drama of the families losing their loved ones. So I think, it's kind of like journalism. Like, even though you're telling a story about a certain area, doesn't necessarily mean that you are either supporting or being pro in that regards. In fact, I think it's great that Andy was there and myself, that we, at least two Colombians, were there, because otherwise the story could have been taken in so many different ways that could have been not accurate to the space, to the culture, to anything at all. So at least two of us were there sort of, helping out on that regard. Not just the two of us, there were a lot of Colombians in the production.
Take me through a typical day of a cinematographer. What does your eye look at? Do you look at things completely different as a cinematographer than a regular person? For example, film critics, they can't really enjoy a film anymore like a fan. They're constantly looking at all the little things in the background just to kind of make an assessment of what the film is. For you, when you watch a TV show, when you watch a movie, are you constantly looking at the color grading? Are you looking at what kind of lens they were using for that shot?
Well, it goes 50-50. If the story, I'll say it this way, if the cinematographer and everybody did a great job of making a compelling and captivating film, then I don't look at anything because I am so invested in the story that I become 100% an audience member. And I think that's what cinematography should be. It should be non-intrusive. It shouldn't call attention upon itself because it's there to support the story, the drama, the emotional aspect. But I will say, there are movies like, for instance, Blade Runner, where the cinematography is very gorgeous. I was not so crazy about the story. So that's a film, for instance, that I looked at it twice for the cinematography.
Right.
And it was
I think many people
going
did.
to a museum kind of thing. But for the rest, I was like, I could take the volume off, in my opinion, not to offend the filmmakers.
True.
So I think that's kind of how it works out for me. It's like there are films that I just watch for the look, but honestly, as an audience, I just want to feel. I love the movie The Secret in Their Eyes from Argentina.
Oh, I love that.
That's one film that, for instance, it's really... Yeah, El Secreto de sus Ojos, and it has it all. It's so well shot, but you don't even think that it's well shot. You're thinking of those characters. You're living with them. You're crying with them. You're loving with them. And that's what cinematography should be like. It should be a supporting tool and not a highlight to yourself.
I got into cinematography when I started hearing the name Emanuel Lubezki, El Chivo. And he's won so many Academy Awards. I wanted to ask a cinematographer such as yourself, what exactly makes him so special?
Well, I've never worked with Chivo directly, but I know him socially, and he is a beautiful human being. So I think he has the combination of all. I think a good cinematographer has to have, first of all, a good eye, but he also has to be a storyteller, and he needs to be a wonderful person to collaborate with. Because when a movie or a film, whatever it is, has like a good aura about it, basically when everybody that works on it loves the project, I think there's something magical that does show in the screen. And I think that's what Chivo does. I think he puts great passion. He brings himself into the picture. And I think that's why his work is outstanding. I'm
dying to ask you, do you use Instagram?
I do, but I'm a funky VP. Like, I'm not like those VPs that they're putting pictures of, like, their work or pictures that they take every day. I'm really the opposite. Like, actually, I don't take pictures when I'm not on set.
So you're like a singer. You only sing in concerts. You don't sing, for people like, in your living room or anything like that. It's like you got to be paid to take a photo or?
Well, I mean, not even, because there are some projects that I sort of do pro bono just because I believe in them. It's more about, I like craving something. So if I was to be doing photography or cinematography all the time, then I don't know, I think some of my enthusiasm towards it might die. That's just my personal take. So because I limit myself from not doing it, then when I'm on set is when I can like explode and like really go into it. Like this particular film that I'm doing, I'm loving it. Like it's 4 a.m. and I'm jumping up and down. Great, next shot, never go. And the actors are like, oh my God, you're enthusiastic. I'm like, yeah, because I'm craving this so much. And I think it's because I don't do it so often. So it doesn't become like a recurring thing. It becomes like an exclusive date that I get with the camera and everything else on set. So I look forward to it.
Who is the best cinematographer you have ever seen?
I love Vittorio Storaro. I think he was one of my greatest influences when I got into this. He's an Italian cinematographer. He did The Conformist. Oh my God, it's like he worked a lot with Bertolucci. He just handles the shadows very much like Rembrandt.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I like
that's a
him.
big praise for him.
It is. I really love the rich shadow situation. But I also love Shamus Magarbi, El Chivo that you mentioned, of course. And now I'm looking more into Rachel Morris. I mean, now that I hear more of her, definitely starting to look more into like more female cinematographers. I'm discovering for myself as well what is out there, because like I said, it's kind of like unfortunate that the praise often goes to the same people, so it becomes like we call in Colombia una rosca, no? So the same over and over and over.
The click, yeah.
And now fortunately, things are getting broader and people are actually starting to dig for new talent. And there is a lot of talent out there, not just in cinematographers. There are so many directors, writers, other people in other areas, but they really just need a break. They have the chops. and they just need a break. So I think, the more our industry broadens, the more as an audience we're going to experience better, fresher cinema, for sure.
How many female Latina cinematographers do you know of?
In person, I only know Ana Mortegui, but by phone conversations or social media, I heard of Moira Morel. She's also read by my agency, and I'm doing right now an HBO pilot at the end of this feature, and I recommended her to do another one of their pilots, just because I heard she was a very pleasant person, and she was working on Insecure as a camera operator. So I'm starting to support more, more female cinematographers. I think referrals is a good thing. So I haven't met her, but I already recommended her for 2 jobs.
Nice.
And I heard of Mariana. I think her last name is Antonelli, something. I also haven't met her, but I know she's a camera operator on Westworld and a lot of things. And she expressed me to me on the phone that she also wants to get more chances as a cinematographer because she's been kind of like labeled as a camera operator. But again, she needs the opportunity. And I think hopefully more women will kind of join forces and elevate each other. I think competition shouldn't be about like you taking the spotlight. I think it's about helping everybody. If you want to get further, you should do it together.
Oh, no,
That's kind of my philosophy on that.
I think it's a great philosophy. And last few questions. Let's say you're a young woman that wants to go into the movie business. Why should they go into cinematography? And what kind of background, what kind of skill do you think that they need in order to be successful in that craft?
I think if you have a natural eye, meaning if your whole life you've been sort of like paying attention to beauty, and beauty is not just beautiful things. There's a lot of beauty in ugliness. So I mean, like, textures, colors, shapes, things that like catch your eye, then you probably have a natural ability for cinematography. So that is the number one thing, because like you asked me earlier, when I do step into a set, I do look at a lot of random things. Like sometimes I start like behind a glass or under objects under a table. Like people think I'm crazy, but really what we're trying to find is what you're trying to find is like how to show something that is not straightforward, how to elevate what's already in front of your eyes. So I think to be a cinematographer, you have to be kind of like an explorer and like a kid, when you look at everything with fresh eyes. Even something that you've seen several times, like sometimes that happens with sets, like you're filming a whole season in the same apartment. So you have to continue exploring more things within the same space. I like to think of a preso, a prison inmate in a cell, right, where you're looking at the same thing, but you still find that little thing on the wall that somebody wrote, or the scratch here and there, just something that is going to make it pop. So I think that's the number one. And for the rest, you do have to learn a lot of technical things, the name of every piece of equipment. I think a DP needs to be a gaffer first. You need to be able to do your own lighting in case your team quits, which that has happened to me actually. So if you find yourself stranded with nobody to do it for you, you need to know exactly how to solve those situations. So yeah, there's a lot of technical things, but for instance, the American Society of Cinematographers, they have an amazing supportive program for education. Like they call it Friends of the ASC, and you get access to all their magazines. You can buy technical books at discounts. You can attend workshops, master classes. It's a great tool, and that's where you learn from people like a Chill, for instance.
What is the most beautiful, visually aesthetic film you've seen in your life?
In darkness and in creepiness, I love Alien. I know it's such a strange movie to call for cinematography, but the first Alien, it's so effective in making you feel that sense of like loneliness and terror in the shadows and the creature and being in space. I love Forrest Gump. I mentioned earlier, The Conformist or Apocalypse Now. Apocalypse Now is also by Vittorio Storaro. And I love Atonement by Seamus McGarry. Like, I think cinematography is so fun.
Well, Carmen Cabana, thank you so much for coming on the show, and congratulations on the second season of the original series from STARZ, Vida. I hope I get to see you at the Oscars one of these days.
Well, I hope so. That's a good challenge, so I'll take it. And thank you so much for all the good wishes. I really appreciate the interview. And again, best luck to all the foreign cinematographers out there. Go kick ass.
So before we move on to our Ant-Man and the Wasp segment with Mike Sargent, I wanted to quickly tell you about Saks underwear. I am in Spain and wouldn't think of going on vacation without them. And there's a simple reason for that, and it's that it feels really good on me. It's that feeling of support and comfort. That's what Saks underwear is all about. It's the only men's underwear that I know that's actually designed with our anatomy in mind. When Saks first got started, they wondered, why can't men's underwear be better? The answer? The ballpark pouch, which is my favorite part of these underwear. A 3D support system unlike anything else in men's underwear today. I use them and it feels like bliss. Everything stays put, no friction. You can move around comfortably in it. And then there's the breathable fabrics. Super soft, moisture wicking that repels body odor. And since I started wearing Saks, I really don't wear any other brand. I want you to feel the same exact way. So I've worked with Saks underwear on this great limited time deal. Shop from anywhere on their site and get $5 off plus free shipping on your first purchase. But to get this great offer, you need to use my promo code HIGHLYRELEVANT at checkout. Order a few pairs of Saks right now with this great offer and go to Saks Underwear at SAXXunderwear.com. That's Saks with 2 X's, and use the promo code HIGHLYRELEVANT at checkout. Remember, SaksUnderwear.com. Promo code HIGHLYRELEVANT. I'm here at the Lowe's Theaters in New York City. Just came out from seeing Marvel's Ant-Man and the Wasp, and I'm joined here by Mike Sargent, film critic extraordinaire. You guys seen him on Fox News, BAI, PBS, and I met you there, and we just literally came out from the Majestic Theater. It was a pretty packed press screening.
Pretty packed. And we went to the 3D screening, which is not so popular with film critics.
Right. Obviously. Disney, on this occasion, decided to split it into a 2D and a 3D screening per the preference of whoever was coming. And it was a first come, first serve, which was...
Yes.
I haven't seen that yet so far.
Well,
It's
let me just say this. Everything is context. Who is more powerful in the film industry than Disney?
Right.
They can do what they want. So, As far as they're concerned, first come, first serve. Maybe we'll let you bring a guest. Maybe we won't. It's Disney. They're pretty much the most powerful film studio on the planet right now.
Absolutely. So if you hear in the background cars whizzing by, we're literally in the median right outside of the theater because they confiscated my phone.
On Broadway.
They didn't confiscate your phone, but they confiscated my phone. So it was a while till I got my phone, and we just decided to kind of do it out here. So let's get right into it. Was Ant-Man and the Wasp actually better than the original Ant-Man?
Well, here's the thing. I want to give two elements of context. One, whenever you have a film that's a first film, it's got to be an origin. So you can't really get into, what you can do with the story and the character and the elements of the story until you've completed the origin. So the first film was an origin film. Now they're free to do whatever you can do with the story.
Right.
That's one context. Two, Marvel has really kind of set the bar,
man.
In terms of superhero films, they get what it is that they're doing before people got what it is that they're doing. And that is that it's a universe. There are multiple characters. We tell stories in the universe. Every film, just like every comic, has its own tone. So, that being said, in some ways, it's free from the constraints of an origin.
Yes.
You get it? And what can we do with this power, with these characters in this universe?
So I thought this sequel was actually better than the original. It was a better movie experience. I enjoyed myself more. I laughed more. I felt that the original didn't have necessarily the punchlines didn't fall through. I was never convinced that Paul Rudd could be a superhero as Ant-Man. I had so many questions after the original, and I always thought it was the weakest link. Now, I might be changing my belief on that. So, I really enjoyed this. I thought the 3D is not worth the extra money. If you can watch it in 2D, go ahead. It has two end credit scenes. The first one's very quick, and then the last one you got to wait till the last credits. So where do you think that this movie now fits in this Avengers universe of Marvel now?
Well, here's what I think. And just to give a little bit of context, once again, what's interesting about what you just said, and I agree with everything you said, but I will add to it to say that, Ant-Man is not, like you said, a superhero. How can he be a hero? He's not a hero in the traditional sense. He's sort of an anti-hero. His moral ambiguity, the fact that he's a thief, all these things. He's someone who's not connected necessarily to the main characters. He is a thief who came in on Hank Pym, who's this pivotal figure in the Marvel universe.
Right, played by Michael Douglas.
By Michael Douglas, with a wife played by Michelle Pfeiffer, which is what the story revolves around. So what's interesting is to see, okay, we've seen enough heroes in the Marvel universe. What about somebody who's kind of sort of peripheral? That's interesting in itself.
Right.
And I think that not only does it work, but just like the comic books, if you establish a universe that's similar to this one, that takes elements of this one, how do these elements interact with each other? How does somebody like Hank Pym fit into the Avengers, that storyline, that, his historical background to the Marvel universe? So I like all of that, and I like the fact that we know this universe well enough to know and see, and I think it fits in very well. It fits in like a glove.
It's interesting. You were just saying, how does this fit into the whole Marvel universe? I think they have a clearly defined vision of how these movies operate. So a lot of the things that I liked about this film in particular were the fact that the movie didn't really get going till like the end of the first quarter of the film, like the first half hour. It was really laying out the relationship between father and daughter, some old friends, and those relationships that were bitter and they were trying to be mended. So it was a lot of human stories before it even really truly got into the action. And those are the things that usually make me go to sleep. Every time you try and tell a human story within an action film from Marvel. And I thought they nailed every single part. If anything, those were the touches that made this film special, I would say.
Well, I agree with you, and here's what I'm reminded of. It's interesting that you picked up on that, because TV and long-form storytelling, which is what TV is, has changed how we view movies, how we view stories. And this had a feel to it like an amped-up TV series.
Right.
Where
absolutely
everything is much higher tech, effects, stakes, but at the same time, oh, look, the mom has been lost for a long time. We didn't even hear about the mom in the first film. Right. Now, and so it's all this, again, what TV has done, in my opinion, and how it's affected the Marvel Universe. The idea of having a universe where things that happen in the universe affect other things in the universe is something that soap operas did, night soaps did, okay, and now what TV has done is taken that to the whole idea of, how do you maintain interest? It's all about the story, like what you said, those stories, the human interest, the humans, and so taking from TV, if you've created these fantastic characters, but they have these interesting, soapy entanglements, okay, you're with it. You care. It makes you care about. You need that first act to make you care about these characters.
If you decide to go see this film, which I think you should, I think it's a really good time. You should go with your whole family. Actually, it's like a family film.
Yes.
But I think at the core, this is a family film that is a comedy at heart, which not every single Marvel movie necessarily is. This is a comedy with heart. And it touches on those, father-daughter issues and those like human touches that I think work so well in this particular film. I felt like this film finally understood what it was. I think this is the perfect example of how to create a great family film that happens to be a Marvel production?
One of the things that Marvel has done is, not only understand what good storytelling is and what people care about,
right,
but like what you just said, realize that it's an experience that people are experiencing on different levels. Just like Pixar, which we mentioned off audio recording, Pixar set the bar higher. One of the things that Pixar does is acknowledge that all the stories have to appeal to the younger generation and the older generation at the same time. This did that, and this did that in a way where, you care about the stories because you understand who these characters are, what their motivation is. You understand Lawrence Fishburne as character in particular plays a character. You understand who that character is.
It's a great cast, by the way.
Great. Listen,
Michelle Pfeiffer, Lawrence
superhero
Fishburne.
Movies can get anybody now. There's nobody, any Oscar.
But, I did think that the Lawrence Fishburne casting was interesting because I know him in the superhero genre as Perry, the editor from Man of Steel,
Superman,
from the Superman franchise in DC. So to bring him over to Marvel, I thought was not necessarily the best casting choice. Did you have any problems with that? Did you see Perry from Superman in there?
No, I didn't see Perry from Superman, but what I saw is, and again, as a film lover,
I thought it was a bit distracting, by the way.
A film lover, I see Lawrence Fishburne, who was in, Coppola's opus of
Matrix.
He was in Apocalypse Now.
Right, and The Matrix as well.
And Apocalypse Now had Marlon Brando, who was also in Superman.
Yeah,
so,
he's
I see all these connections as
by the way, speaking of Lawrence Fishburne, one of the great things about this film is I think that this particular film, more than any other film that has used this technology, is the de-aging technology.
Oh my goodness.
Holy moly, man.
What? You marvel at it, to pardon the pun. You marvel at just how fantastic and how much they've got it down.
They've got it down. Michelle Pfeiffer, Michael Douglas,
Larry Fishburne,
de-aged. Wow.
They de-aged Larry Fishburne, too.
I thought at first there was like old scenes that they had gotten back from the 70s or the 80s. It was incredible how the pores, those little nuances that they seem like they were in their 40s. It was really incredible.
It's seamless. Completely seamless.
And that brings the conversation about this digitization of actors. Are we headed down that route where we conserve the images of a lot of these actors, or we actually give older actors a whole other career, like a third career maybe, where you can...
Listen, my prediction, two things. One, we're already there, in my opinion. The Marvel movies, they've done it with Robert Downey Jr., done it with all the characters in the Marvel Universe, so we're already there. But my prediction is that there'll be that video game where the actors are still alive, whether it's Shatner as Star Trek, Captain Kirk, where they'll do it. And maybe it'll be the new Terminator, because come on, they're going to pretend that Terminator 3, 4, and 5 did not happen. So Schwarzenegger, is he digitally there? So I'm curious, but I just think that it'll get to a point where yes.
Oh, we're heading down that route. The fact that they mastered this in Ant-Man and the Wasp means that the next movie is that's it. We're not even going to be able to tell the difference.
They scratched upon it in Star Wars,
that's right.
They scratched on it,
That's right.
And Carrie Fisher was alive when she said, yes, make me young again. So,
this is a really good movie. And I think for you guys that are maybe iffy about it, because for a while it's been sort of the weakest link, it answers a lot of the questions of why Ant-Man was not in Avengers 3. And what exactly happens, and that is revealed in one of the end credits. It answers it. If you want to stay for the end credit,
you're trained now. You're going to stay.
You're going to stay, but I don't necessarily think it's worth it.
Well, here's what I will say. Okay.
I think you should leave after the first credit. That's my particular opinion.
Okay, all right. I can't really argue that point of view. Okay, but I will say this: that we're at a stage now where Marvel movies have kind of staked out their own place in entertainment.
Yep.
And that's important. And that's important and significant. It's the beginning of something that may change, and other things may take its place in the future, 40 years from now, 20 years from now, 10 years from now. But Marvel has staked out its own place, where it's in a interesting hybrid between it's an existing IP, but it's been translated, but at the same time there are extensions of it in TV, and the movies are really only vehicles to keep recreating itself. They're smart enough to know that as time goes on, you're going to cast out different actors.
Yeah.
Times are going to change. So all the new characters, they're talking about all these movies with potentially, the female bodyguards from, Wakanda. That's so radically different.
Oh, yeah. There was definitely like a female empowerment vibe here. Absolutely. Because the main villain was a female.
Yes.
And I would even say that the Wasp had more of a
through line.
Absolutely, but not only through line, but I felt that the movie really was driven by her. And to a certain
her
extent,
relationship with her mom.
Yeah, and then Michelle Pfeiffer, which was the actual motivation and desire by our heroes to fulfill the mission.
And I'll say something else too, the power of who Michelle Pfeiffer is. By the time you do get to see her and all that the plot that revolves around her is revealed, it's significant.
Yeah.
Because you don't just see this character. You see this character. You see Michelle Pfeiffer.
Oh, yeah.
You see this actress.
By the way, she doesn't age.
No, exactly.
They didn't apply CGI towards the end.
Exactly.
You couldn't tell between the young one and the older one.
Practically.
I was like, wow.
Her hair's not so blonde, But that's it. But that also suggests something. Again, we were talking before, I think prior to, when Clint Eastwood did Unforgiven, he had grown into the role. And,
right.
You know what I mean? And there are certain characters now, or certain actors, Rob Downey Jr. in the Marvel Universe. By the time he did Iron Man, part of Iron Man's past, if you read the comics, really kind of parallels Downey's past and who Downey is, So, having a sense of an actor's past work, and the body of work that stands behind them when they take on some iconic role. Even Michael Douglas, you believe he was a hero when he was younger because of who he is. Same thing with casting somebody like Michelle Pfeiffer as to who she is and what she's been, in support of all these Michael Douglases and Al Pacinos. And
it's great to see the veterans, the icons we used to grow up with, still now reaching a younger audience. This is the power of Marvel in these superhero genre movies. We would have never seen them. If you would have mentioned superhero movies to Michael Douglas back in the 80s, he would have spit in your face. He would have spit in your face out of just pure laughter. So the fact that Marvel's giving these guys a third chance almost at having another Hollywood comeback,
in the twilight
it's incredible. And there's a great female vibe in this film, a wonderful family vibe as well. I don't know, man. I can't say anything more great about this film. I really enjoyed myself tonight.
I did too, and I think, again, superhero films have become a genre. And Marvel, like other filmmakers, which we talked about off audio, have redefined the genre. Marvel, Kevin Feige, have redefined the genre, and they do it better than anybody else. Nobody does it better. Nobody does it better.
I highly doubt that now that they fortified their weakest link as a top movie, I can't wait for the trilogy.
Sure. And
for the third one. And by the way, there was a question mark about it. I have to do more investigation on why that question mark came in because at the end of the whole movie, the last text that you see from the screen is Ant-Man and the Wasp will return, and then a question mark appears. What the hell was that all about?
Well, something else I gotta say, though, you mentioned earlier, and I forgot to mention it, was the humor.
Oh yeah,
And
key.
it is key, and it's key to sort of, and you said something else too that I think is key. It knows what it is. It's self-aware.
And it differentiates its comedy from the other comedies like the Spider-Man humor.
Right. Yes.
Each
film knows what it is.
That's hard to do.
It is hard to do, and again, it's something that's smart that I think Marvel has done in being aware that, you know what, we can only take ourselves but so seriously.
Right.
And being aware of that, whereas this is, I think, where
the problem with
DC is that because Batman led the charge, because Dark Knight or the Dark Knight Begins,
template.
Batman Begins,
a very successful template.
A successful template, but not a sustainable one.
Right, and
that for heroes.
But who could have predicted that, though?
I don't think anybody was thinking that far ahead.
No, and I thought the Man of Steel going dark, I thought was the right touch, because the problem with Brandon Routh Superman was that it was too much of an homage to the 70s and 80s.
Right.
And it should have been dark, and I thought that it did its job, but I don't know if every single other movie had to be like that.
Well, that's the thing. The thing is, it was artistically it was the right choice, but commercially, no.
That's a great point that you just made. Just to finalize, Michael Peña, the Hispanic angle here.
In my opinion, it's interesting. Or I want to hear yours first before I say anything.
Well, I felt like they had the secondary cast, the criminals, some of the villains, the Michael T.I., that was very diverse. They had an Indian character, a Russian guy. They really sort of knew exactly what cultural touch points to hit to include everybody.
Smart.
Smart. I mean, listen, in this particular case, yes, we understand that all the protagonists are Caucasian white. There's no problem with that. No one's yelling, protests. We got to have like a Latino. No one's doing it. I thought that Michael Peña was hilarious in this film. Actually, probably even more than the first time. I hear they have plans for him.
Well, let me just say this. My opinion on Michael Peña, he's one of those actors. He's a Latino actor. He can do drama. He can do comedy. He is equally adept at both. He has what the like a Robin Williams or the greatest comedians of all can do is he can move you. He can move you to laugh, or he can move you to cry.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's that level of talent, in my opinion.
Yeah,
but of course,
he can inspire you, and he can just awestruck you.
Exactly. But he's got that ability, and again, that's just like a gift. But at the same time, yes, in my opinion, in terms of quote unquote a comedy relief in these, we're going to destroy the planet. He's brilliant. He's brilliant. He is brilliant. He steals it. He steals it.
Comic timing is excellent.
He's smart enough. They're smart enough to know he's that good. I don't want to give it away, but he's got his moments in the film where it's
It's absolute. But I thought T.I. was weak, man. If I had to nitpick on anything,
they didn't have anything to do.
He's just not a good actor. He's just not a good actor. His reactions were overly exaggerated, but because they're so brief, you kind of just move on.
Underwritten.
Yeah.
Not that he necessarily.
And I'm sure he's like, I don't mind being in a Marvel movie.
Of course, he's smart. Listen, if I were to, I'd be like, yes, I'll play the butler. I'll be the butler. So yeah.
Well, with that said, we're leaving the Lowe's theaters. Mike, it was great seeing this movie. Yeah, it was the AMC Lowe's theaters.
Lowe's owns Lowe's, don't they? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Lincoln Square here on Broadway and 68th. Good movie. Good seeing you too, man.
You too, man.
And that does it for another episode of the Highly Relevant Podcast. I want to thank Carmen Cabana and Mike Sargent for coming on the show. I learned a lot about cinematography, and hopefully you guys got a good sense of whether you should go see Ant-Man and the Wasp. I think you definitely should. And if you guys want to support the show, please feel free. Go ahead and share the podcast with all your friends, subscribe, and leave a review if you can. I'm going to start making my way back to the pool, see if I can work up my tan a little bit, get some rays before I leave back to the United States, back to the city, and hopefully you guys can check out some more of the episodes we have in the big, highly relevant library. I'll leave you guys for now. I'm Jack Rico. See you next week on another episode of Highly Relevant.